Okay. Okay, I hope this will be a short one. Just to elucidate, and you might remember me from class saying a couple of times that if you know the history behind tax law, it really helps to understand the current law. And so what I hope to do here was to elaborate on the the baskets. If you recall, we had baskets that we talked about with regard to the foreign tax credit, and there were two of them. There was the general for general income, and there was the passive. And of course, the general is sort of like anything that's not passive goes in here, and the passive is the dividends, interest, etc. That's what goes into that basket. The foreign tax credit is calculated separately for income in the general category and the foreign tax credit paid, or the foreign tax paid against that income to calculate the foreign tax credit, and it's calculated separately here, recognizing the foreign tax paid against it to calculate the foreign tax credit against passive income. The reason for this is kind of interesting, which gives you an insight to one of our major emphases that we're going to have this week. That's not an English word, by the way. I just made that up because I don't think emphasis is, or I don't think the word emphasis can be pluralized, and if it can, I'm not pronouncing it very well. But we're going to emphasize this week tax schemes in the international tax market, and how this basket situation came about in American tax law is a reflection of tax scheming by tax lawyers and accountants. And here's how it worked. Prior to this basket concept, which I believe was 1986 when that first started, but before that, what would happen is everything was all in one basket. So what would happen is that in 1 year, let's say in year one, a U.S. company would look at their foreign tax credit, and they would see that they had more foreign tax credit than they could use. They went back 1 year and they couldn't use that, or couldn't use it all up, and they wound up with a carry forward, as you know. And that, not that there's anything wrong with that, but obviously U.S. companies were anxious to make sure they used their foreign tax credit carry forwards before they expired. Remember, they have 10 years. So what would happen is they would, let's say the reason for the carry forward and the reason they didn't use all their foreign tax credit is because they had perhaps U.S. losses that were just not allowing them to use these foreign tax credits that were coming in. So what they would do in the next year, in one of the carry forward years, I think you got the idea, so we'll just say in future year, what they would do is they would take some of their assets from the U.S., and we'll say investment assets. This is really clever when you see this. What they would do is take U.S. investment assets, and they would send them either across the Pacific Ocean into Asia, or into across the Atlantic Ocean into European commercial enterprise countries. I'm just sort of saying they would send it overseas. That's the main thing, and they would put it into a foreign corporation, so it would become foreign sourced income, creating income that they could use against the foreign tax credit. That's what they were basically doing. They were creating foreign income that would be, and remember, this foreign income would still get taxed in the U.S., but since it would be foreign sourced, it would allow them to use up the foreign tax credit. This really will test your mettle if you have a good understanding of how the foreign tax credit's working. See if you can't figure out on your own why this is working, why they needed to do this. If they didn't have, even if they had future U.S. income, in the year that the foreign tax credit carry forward was caused by U.S. losses, even if they were going to have future income in the U.S., without future foreign sourced income, the foreign tax credit carry forward would be meaningless. So they needed to create, and I do mean create, foreign source income, even though it would be taxed back in the U.S. And the way they did it is they would move the money, and it was clearly investment money that was being moved overseas, investment money. So that way they got to use up the foreign tax credit because they created a foreign source income. So the IRS would say, well, wait a minute, that's sort of subterfuge, and they didn't like it. So they appealed to Congress, and Congress came in 1986, I believe it was, and they created baskets. In fact, they created 9 baskets, which made the thing a nightmare. It was very confusing as to how it was supposed to be taken care of and which went into each basket. It was just a nightmare. But the idea of separating the baskets out is to say, well, the original foreign tax credit carry forward came from, let's say, general income or active income, and you should look up in the book to see exactly what they call it. But it came from that, and you shouldn't be able to manipulate future foreign source income as, let's say, passive income in order to eat up the foreign tax credit. That it was just a subterfuge. So that's the idea of the baskets, is to separate out and to sort of get rid of this scheme. The 9 baskets in 2004 is when Congress finally figured out that the way this is working is unwieldy, to say the least, and they got rid of the 9 and went just to the 2, and the 2 is enough to take care of this problem, in my opinion. 2 baskets. So it cuts back on the manipulation, and we might have mentioned that originally, I think it was originally, we might have mentioned that there was an idea to have the foreign tax credit baskets be actually just per country, on the theory that you might want to create foreign source investment income from the country where you got your foreign tax credit originally, but they might have a high tax there, so that wouldn't work, and they thought that would be a way to cut back on this gimmick, this scheme. But they went to the basket case instead. That's a deliberate phrase which those of you who are familiar with U.S. American idioms will understand when I use the phrase basket case. You can ask me in class about that, but at any rate, that's what we have, and that's the reason how this basket idea came about. Thank you.